Docking request accepted.
Good morning, New Eden. Today is October 8th, 2024, and this is the Federation Frontline Report. I'm your host, Frozen Fallout, and today we are continuing our CSM series of interviews, and we get to be honored by the presence of the Mick Fightmaster, one of the best names in EVE Online. Tell me, how did you get into EVE Online?
Well, thank you for the intro. Yeah, so EVE Online, what a fun story everyone seems to have when it talks about their introduction. But for me, it was just a friend of mine who lived in the dorm, the floor below me, and we were hanging out one day, and he was on his laptop, and I was like, "Whoa, what game are you playing?" He's like, "Oh, it's this game called Eve." I was like, "What's it about? What are you doing?" He's like, "Well, you can't do whatever you want." I was like, what do you mean? Like, tell me more. And so we're sitting down and he's like, yeah, and he's walking me through all his ships. And I'm a guy who's attracted to like pretty games, right? So if it's got like really nice graphics and things like that, I'm all about it. And so Eve back in 2009 to me had great graphics. So I went in and he's showing me the ship, and the one that sold me, and this is going to sound so weird, the one that sold me was the Manicore.
Oh, really?
Funnily enough. Yeah.
And this is before bomber changes where it looked more like just the frigate, right? It wasn't
Yep.
as boosted. Oh, and this is my kitten, Captain Cat
Aw,
Janeway. She
kitty.
wants to say hi. Yes, you do. Here, you can go over there. Go sit on. Go sit in the second in command's chair. I'm sorry, Captain. I'm an admiral. I'm a luminaire general, according to the Galente. So. Awesome.
But
So
no,
So they
yeah,
kind
he
of
showed me
introduced
that.
into the game, kind of showed you what was kind of going on. So you had like when you came in through somebody that's been playing for a while. Like, had they been part of like a major organization or?
No, it was just him and his brother. That's it. And he had been playing, let's see, he'd been playing since 2004.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so he had been playing for a while. He to me, he was like the guy who knew everything about Eve. And it's funny, like as we got up through Eve together, like we started out and started running missions in high sec, which is, pretty boring, right? But we were just hanging out, chatting or whatever, like in real life, LAN party style, and we're running missions, and all of a sudden we decide to hop over to low sec one day, and I see this thing called a cyno field, and like, ooh, what's that? Eve is all about like the incremental discovery, right? Every time
Right.
you think
Yep.
you figured it out, there's one new thing that happens. And you're like, what does this piece do? And that's how I met my buddy Tomaz, who I still fly with today in no vacancies. And he was like, "Oh, you guys like that? Like, you should come out to Nullsec. That's where like all the money is." And I was like, "Okay, we like money." So we just hopped on the train and went to Nullsec.
I love that
Um,
similar kind of story to me, where it's like my friends had been playing for a long time. I had jumped in and out of the game though a little bit, and then when I came in, one of the first things I did, like after about 3 months of mission running, we'd set up like Hain was like level 3 mission running area in low sec, surrounded by high sec, surrounded by low sec, surrounded by high sec. It was this really weird pocket. So I dragged all my buddies out to 0.0 pretty quickly. We were like, I was like, yeah, somebody said there's riches to be had out here. Let's go join the interstellar alcoholic conglomerate. And they sound fun, and they own a bunch of space and catch. This is gonna be great. So how
it's
was your
funny.
first endeavor into 0.0? Did you have a successful making it out with tons and billions of ISK, or did you find yourself floundering?
So it was a little terrifying. I remember it was back when I think it was Morris Mehe was still around, and I had we were like in Caldari space. So we were just heading up the pipe to like Pure Blind, Fade, Declan, and I remember jumping in. There was 100 people in local, and it was a gate camp. And my buddy was like, "Oh, dude," and we were manticores, thankfully. But he's like, "Bro, you got to cloak. You got to cloak." So like we're cloaking up, and we're literally like trying to weave through 100K of bubbles. So the first endeavor, I would say, was not necessarily the best. But once we actually got established, we got set up there, and we actually got to the right alliance, right? Then we could actually start making some money.
What was the first 0.0 alliance you joined up with?
It was Fatal Ascension. Was
Okay,
the name
yep,
of it.
they're very
Yeah.
famous in the Eve books. They were part of that was like the Northern Wars. I don't think they were part of the Great Wars, but they were part of the Northern. No, maybe they were part of the Northern or the Great War as well. But in any case, yeah.
I remember training a Maelstrom, Artie Maelstrom, and we camped. We did the Fountain campaign with goons. I remember hell camping J5A, and worked my way down that way. And I remember training a Maelstrom and a Scorpion. I was like, that's gonna be my thing. I'm gonna be jamming people and I'll be alphaing people. And it was back when tie-dye didn't exist, right? So we were still like getting all the server lag and stuff, trying to jump through things and whatnot.
It's unbelievable how much people complain about tie-dye, and then it's like you don't understand. Like the only time that you start to understand is when it's tie-dye and everything is breaking because there's 7,000 people in the system. It's like, okay, now you kind of are experiencing what we experienced back in the day, but it was with like 300 people, so.
The OG, yeah. Tie-dye plus fire.
Awesome. So, how long did you stay inside of 0.0? What were your adventures while you were there?
Well, I remember so the group that I was with was basically a bunch of friends that had either known each other in real life or they had met in Eve. And we basically just did little roams. Like we were just kind of small gangers, nano gangers that went out and about. We would show up for the CTAs and stuff, but everything else was basically sitting in our system. Back in the day when corps would get assigned moons and posses, and they would pull their moons through posses. So we had like a posse in BTAC R, I think it was, or BR TAC. I always get those confused. But it was out in Fade, and yeah, but that was us, and we would do like Skynet carrier stuff, really cancerous stuff, where we would assign the 10 Einherjes to like the the little crucifier running around, or a little condor, and it would just warp around the system following wherever we wanted to go. But it was fun. We would do that. Of course, I had learned how to rat for the first time, which was a terrifying experience.
Belt ratting, right? Was that belt ratting time? Yeah.
It was belt ratting and just random anoms, and I had no idea what I was doing.
And you didn't spawn like a constant good amount of anoms. It was like a sanctum would show up, and you'd be like, "Oh, cool, a sanctum."
Yeah, exactly. Like quick, and everyone's running to get there, and the first one there is like some ship that you just can't mess with, and you're like, "Okay, you can have it."
Right. Awesome. So, we definitely want to make sure, and I want to have you back on here because it sounds like you've got a million stories from your history that we could just sit down and have like a really cool, like, let's just go through the whole history here. But I definitely want to make sure that we have time to talk about a lot of your platform and get into the CSM here. But what are some of the most recent things? What have you been up to recently? Who are you part of now? And what do you do in Eve these days?
Yeah, so after I did my escapades, if you will, out in nullsec, I kind of got tired of it, and the group that I was with was like, "Yeah, we're done with Sov Null." Like, it got a little too pappy, I like to say, in the sense that if you didn't show up, there was like you got basically like a note against your permanent record, and they would, finger wag you out of the alliance. So we decided that we were going to leave, and we set up in a wormhole. And ever since then, I've been in wormholes. I was That's basically what I do exclusively. I have a couple alts that
So what
fly
year
with
was
rope
that
propel.
that you jumped into wormholes and started focusing in on that? Just give a little bit of a time frame.
Yeah, so that would have been 2011.
Okay, so I mean you're
2011.
like 13 years into being a wormholer.
Yeah, yeah. Wormholing has definitely been like a big part of my Eve journey.
And they were
I
fairly
think,
new when you got into them too, because they couldn't have been out for very long at that point, if I'm remembering correctly.
yeah, I can't remember the exact year that they came out, but it wasn't long after, maybe a year after they came out. And so we had decided to set up in a little. I think our first wormhole that we were in was like a 5-3, C5 with the 3 static, and then after that we like slowly worked our way up. We were in a 5-4 red giant, and then we were in a 5-5 vanilla, and then we were in a 5-5 mag, and then real life got in the way and the group fell apart, and then we found a new group and started it all over again. But recently, that's what I've been. I've been a part of No Vacancies now for, gosh, let's check. 4 months, 4 days as of today. So Novak I'd flown with for almost 3 years, maybe just shy of 3 years from 2017 to, yeah, 2017 to 2019. So it's like 2 3/4 of a year. Um, then after that, because Novak unanchored everything and moved to a 2-5 null, which I wasn't really interested in because I'd done 2-5 null life, and that's really fun for like nano stuff, but I wanted more of the brawl type content. And so I decided I wanted to go join the big boys over at Hard Knocks, join Hard Knocks, flew with them for 2 years, 3 years, 2 2 3/4 years. You're starting to notice a trend here. Then Hard Knocks went AFK. And then so I joined Laserhawks, who was obviously very closely aligned with Hard Knocks, and we'd kind of known each other, flown with each other for a while. And then after the most recent war, I went back to Novak.
Awesome. So, what are some of the like main activities you talked about? Like you liked brawling and small gang kind of activities. So, were you also taking part in like using the capitals to spawn drifters? I actually don't understand how any
Mm.
of that works in any way, shape, or form. But it does sound like there's like massive money making, crazy things that you can do, and if you control your holes, you know what you're doing. You can just pour in the money. Did you have a lot of experience with that as well?
There's some. I back before when it was good, we'll say back in the good old days, there used to be something that allowed you to chain escalate your sites, and basically what that means is you could. And this was back in like original wormhole content when you could like fit a triage module to a nidhogger. Remember those days?
Yep. Before
Yeah, that
faxes.
was Yeah, that was like those days. So you could chain escalate your sites, and back then, that's when the money was great. Like the T3s would come out, people were really pushing, and you would just sit there and you would have your fax, you'd have a carrier, or you'd have a carrier, you'd have your dread, and you would just chain escalate and make sure that you get all the Avengers and run them once every 4 days because they spawn after the fourth day. And then that changed with the Drifter changes. The Drifter then became the new escalation that you look forward to. And you used to be able to do that in subcaps. Now with the most recent changes, you have to run it with the dread, or otherwise you won't be able to get the drifter, which is like the big 300 mil payout that everybody talks about, the great money making opportunity. What we've seen from people adjusting is people are just chain running sites, forgetting the drifter, and then trying to find a new hole to do it all over again.
Interesting. So the drifter opportunity is kind of it's not worth it to throw a dread at it.
Well, some of these groups are low class groups. In fact, with the groups that I've met with so far, they've had they're like, C4 with C5 static groups. Their money making opportunity is through either their 3 static or their 5 static. They used to be able to spawn the drifter, which would be decent for, making money, but now that they can't do that because they can't put a capital from a 4 to a 5, they they don't have the option to do that anymore. So the best thing they could do to make up for it is just chain run as many as they can and run it down so that clear, basically full clear it, roll the hole, go to a new one.
How's your personal feeling on that? Do you think that's a good change or a bad change?
I think the intention behind it was good. I think a lot of what CCP does has good intention at first, but the implementation was poor, I think. Unfortunately, what we're seeing, and if you look at the MER and Anemone from formerly from Singularity Syndicate, now over at Turbo, took the time to kind of walk me through the effects that it's had on the MER, and we've seen since the change, we've seen a 50% drop in the amount of ISK generated, basically, in C5 space, which is huge. That's like if you took someone's Haven payout and you just halved it, and you were like, all right, see ya. Like, remember back when the BRM bottomed out at 60% or whatever it was,
Yep. Yeah,
and
and
then it
every
finally got
system.
reverted?
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of having the first feeling of that effect. So I think it was a little overdone. It's not having the effect that we're hoping to see, which is more capitals in space. We are seeing like more in general, but we're not seeing nearly the amount of the activity that we were back when it was a lot of Marauders running.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think this kind of brings us more into a territory that I'd like to kind of get your thoughts on. What do you think the CSM is? What do you think the capabilities of the CSM person are, and the responsibilities of a CSM member is? Do you think that they have the dev power to go in and just smack around CCP and tell them what to do because the masses say this, I get this? Do you think that they're completely useless and there's nothing that they do, and they're obviously probably not the latter because you're running for it. So
I'm running to effectively gut the CSM from the inside.
there,
Hashtag drain the swamp. Uh,
love it.
no, I think realistically, and one of the benefits that I have is I know Mark in real life. Like I was lucky and fortunate enough to actually get a chance to meet him and become good friends with him through just real life. Like we met through Eve, but then I was like, he's like, I messaged him. I said, "Where do you live in Georgia?" And he told me the town. I was like, "Dude, that's like an hour away from me." So we would like hang out, every so often. And a lot of times when we would hang out, we would talk about wormholes, politics, just anything that was happening. And I asked him a lot about the CSM. I was like, "Hey, what is it like?" And obviously, I get that you're protected by NDA and you can't say too much, but what is it like being out there? He said, "Well, basically, you're just there. You're there for the ride, and if you're lucky, CCP will listen to you whenever you say something that goes against what the expectation is or what the impact might be." So the whole idea is, oh, for CSM, like CCP is going to take the game the direction they want to go, but if we do our job, then we'll at least hopefully be able to minimize any negative impact that it may have. You remember that whole like intention implementation? I want to bring the implementation closer to the to what the intended result is.
Well said. Well said. Um, so speaking of the CSM, what you're capable of possibly doing and how you kind of view it, what is the platform that you're currently running on?
Yeah, so at risk of sounding too much like a politician, it's basically a grassroots effort. I don't have like any connections to big null blocks. I don't have like sway to just be like, hey, let me in, put me as your number 6 or whatever, or your number 4. The null blocks are gonna do what they're gonna do. Hopefully they put out a ballot that's diverse so we have at least a chance. But yeah, my platform is just meet and talk with people. I was thankful that after my interview with CCP, I had a group reach out saying, "Hey, like we just saw your interview, we want to talk." And I was like, "Cool, let's schedule a time." And so we met earlier today and had a chance to talk through wormhole space. What do you like? What do you not like? What do you wish you could do if you could just snap your fingers and change something overnight? What would it be? And so that's basically my platform, is just gather data and then be able to be a representative for the people that live within wormhole space. So whenever something comes up that may impact our area of space, I could just chime in and say, "Hey, we talked about that. And here's all the people I talked about that with." and here's why it would be bad or good to implement a change like this. And so that's really what the whole platform is. I don't have any outlandish ideas. I'm not about to invent like a new tier 4 ship or something crazy like that, or C7 space. I don't I don't have anything like that. I just want people. I want people out in space. I want them to have a reason to come to wormholes. I don't want them to have a reason to roll them off immediately when they see them. I just want to be involved.
Awesome. No, absolutely. It sounds like you have a good strategy, good idea of how to get out there. Is this your first time that you've been running for CSM?
Yeah, it is.
So a little, is it getting a little bit? I mean, I'm starting to get way overwhelmed, but I'm also like, I'm a reporter that's also running, so it's always this is like double like time for me, but also double screen time. So
You're double whemming for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
cheating. I feel like a little bit, but only if I get on, and if the then people could be like, you fucking asshole. But but no, it sounds yeah, I like your platform. Can you go in a little bit more into the detail of what kind of paradigm are you trying to bring to CCP when it comes to what I understand that you want to take in what the community is doing, but you're definitely going to have a lot of your personal experience is going to matter a large amount. What is the
Sure.
paradigm that you're how do you see wormholes? What is the purpose of them in zero or in EVE Online in general? And do you have a different vision than maybe what you think CCP's vision is, or do you think that your visions kind of collide and go together really well, or are you trying to change the paradigm?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the first questions I would ask CCP if I were to get on is just be like, hey, so what is the plan for wormholes? Like, what's your vision? What do you want wormholes to be? You may remember from back in the day, like wormholes were supposed to be a place that people never lived,
Yep.
and all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden we have like this community where people are putting up passes, and they're like, oh, we did not think about this, and then it's like way too late to do anything about it.
And then upwell
Um,
structures came, and permanent homes of empires are being built in wormhole space. So
yep.
would you say that it's fair to say that you don't understand what CCP's vision is at all at this point?
I don't, and I'm really curious because we've kind of like wormholers have kind of made wormholes what they are today. And at the very basis of what they are, it's basically cheat codes for traveling, right? Like they're like
That's what I
wormholes are
use
the
them
original.
for. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I. That's what I and I in a little bit of day diving where I did the original intent
Mhm.
of CCP. I feel like is where I fall with wormholes because I don't deal with them very much. I use them for travel and I jump into them with a few guardians and a few buddies that want to go and make some money and maybe get into a fight with somebody that is also a small gang, and that seems cool. Living out of them, and I've had lots of opportunities. I've even been part of the Goonswarm's wormhole corp, and I never went to the work. I mean, I went like once, and I was like, no, like I'm over here. I'll hang out in 0.0 because I understand it, and I don't have to do all the work. It sounds like there's a
Yeah.
lot of work to live in wormhole space, even if it's like it's not intended or wasn't originally intended. It seems like it's now intended to still be livable in, but it needs to be work in order to live in, and it needs to be dangerous. You can put it up in an upwell structure, but it gets blown up. So
Right.
since we don't really know, and I agree, I don't know what the hell CCP is doing with most of the parts of their game right now. I would love to know, what is wormhole space to you? What is low sec? What is 0.0? What is high sec? What is faction warfare space? What are these areas, and what are your intended beliefs, and what's your paradigm here that you're trying to bring about but since we don't know what they want for wormholes, though, what is your paradigm? What would you try and convince them to, or would you try and convince them to make it one way or the other, or would you just go with whatever vision that they kind of go with?
I think it's important to shape, like at the end of the day, like we mentioned before, CCP is going to go forward with their
Mm-hmm.
game plan. Like they've already done all the road mapping, and they've allocated the dev time and this, that, and the other. um especially by the time that we would potentially get in. So I think the biggest impact I could have is be like, hey, so if you're gonna change things, I understand that. It's your game, do what you want. But please don't change these key components. These key components are things that every group that live in wormhole space cherish and love, and it's really important that we don't impact them. You could change anything else you want, but don't touch these things. A lot of the ones that I hear all the time are, we love the fact that there's no local. That's
Yep. No.
awesome.
Yeah. It's epic.
Yeah.
That's makes that space super unique.
We love the fact that it intel matters. The person that's able to scout someone first without them realizing has the advantage, and that actually matters. You can't just look at local and be like, oh, there's a bad guy here now, and then change how you would go about your day. People love the fact that there's mass limits, right? So you don't have to worry about getting 500 Init and Goon Kikis and bombers, waiting for you on the other side of a hole, unless you're in a frig hole that has infinite mass and extended lifetime. Well, we can talk about that another time. That's probably the only part of wormhole space that has unbalanced power projection, but that's another thing. So I think those key things would have to be the same. We like the fact that there's mass limits. We like the fact that there's different weather that you can experience. Red giants, black holes, magnetars, wolf raids, etc. Obviously, I love Pulsar because Pulsar life is bae, and we love shield ships.
Absolutely. Would you say though that so we had talked about a little bit about what we kind of CCP put out a kind of a vision that they wanted, that it was going to be nomad land, that it was going to be no local, but nobody's living here. You would cross paths with people. Do you? It's definitely not that way. But do you think that it is better off the way that it is now than their original envisionment? Do you think that the empires that are being built in wormhole space are much better than having it be a lawless, uncontrollable, not being able to put up any structures kind of space?
Yeah, because the way it is now allows for people to have incentive to go fight. So if you're in space that's just transient, then there's not a real reason, there's no motivation to be like, okay, well, I can't really stick around, so I'm limited by either the time or the mass that's on the wormhole, right? And that can be a bit of a detractor. But if I know that this is my home, right, and I can set up shop and I can build up assets that will allow me to engage in the space further, then that's a good thing, because then more people will likely do the same, and that increases the amount of people that you'll interact with. So I think the place that we're at now is definitely better than what the original space was. It's still very lawless. There's no asset safety. Trillions of ISK can drop from these structures, and the fights that you get sometimes over these evictions that happen, which wouldn't happen otherwise, if you weren't able to actually anchor these structures, are just incredible. Like the TD Sin eviction in 2020 had so many different moving pieces to it, and so many individuals making decisions at different times, and different fights playing out on different grids, on different holes. It was absolute insanity to be a part of that and be involved in that, and that wouldn't exist otherwise.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think I agree with that. It's something that one of my weakest points is probably wormhole space. So I would love to continue. I want to continue conversations with you in the future and stuff, and especially, just try and learn as much as I can, from anything that you kind of put out there, because that is wormhole space is interesting, it's special, and it does need to remain special and interesting, and you got to be really careful with messing with it. In that regards, though, it sounds like a lot of your expertise is in wormhole space. How do you feel about the other areas? Where do you think your other strengths are, and what do you think your weaknesses are?
Sure. So one of the things that's become a running tradition at this point is every time I join a wormhole group, I always find a little system that I want to take Sovereign. One of the reasons I like to do that is to stay up to date on solve mechanics, to stay up to date on the current meta, and then of course find money making or fight opportunities that exist out there.
Interesting. I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, so it's fun, you know. We like when the Equinox changes hit, like I was the first person to like click the switch to Sov Hub thing because I just wanted to learn about it. I just wanted to see
Right.
what it was
Yeah.
about. We owned the system V7G out in Wicked Creek, so we had Triumvirate as our neighbors and uh, another group as our neighbors. I don't remember the name, but they were largely quiet until we started poking them, and then we got the big fight that we wanted. And that was, you know, we basically had all our friends come out. We were in vultures, they were in bar guests, and we won the cap fight, so we won the grid. And so that's another area that I think I'm pretty well versed on. I'm not at all versed on like the 1000v1000 warfare thing. I've flown Titans and supers exclusively in like hyper nano config, like back when hyper dropping was the thing.
Yep.
And supers I've done blob config as well as hyper config, but those are kind of collecting dust right now. But yeah,
Not
like I feel like
surprisingly.
yeah, it's like just having a toe in that has really given me an opportunity to kind of stay up to date on that type of warfare. We'll call it mid scale because I think the final tally was like 75 versus 80 or something like that. And then Rote Capel is a great group of dudes. I've known them for so long.
So many
And
cool videos that they've created. I watch their videos just every once in a while. I'll just throw on like a Rote Capel video, and I'm just like, this is such production value, like such well done, thought out. Like, oh my god, and it just is so beautiful. Especially their smart bombing, pipe bombing video. Like, it just is
the
like,
Praxis bomb, yeah.
hearing enemy comms. So Eve. So Eve that they got that and they got to put it in there. It's just like, oh my god, this is sexy time.
Yeah, no, it's great, and they're like they're kind enough to let me fly with them, and so I keep my skills up that way as well, as far as like staying up on the meta. I will say though, even though they operate in low sec, um, I'm not really up to speed on low sec warfare. Like I've been involved in battlefields before, maybe like 2 or 3 at most. So it's like I've dipped a toe in it. I don't really know much else other than that. And then for as a wormholer, high sec is technically the scariest place
Yeah.
because everyone's trying to gank you, and so
Never. There's so many people in local. I'm used to it being empty. And even me as a
yeah,
low sector, I'm like, well, everybody's trying to kill me in low sec, but now there's hundreds of people in this system. Hundreds of people trying to murder me is different than 30 people trying to murder me. Like,
exactly. So I definitely think high sec's a weak point, industry is a weak point. Um, and like the low sec faction warfare stuff, while I understand the mechanics, I wouldn't say that I'm an expert on it at all.
awesome. Well, it sounds like we complement each other quite well in some areas, and then we also agree that high sec, the fuck is that? I'm just trying to get my hauler in and out, and everybody's trying to murder me. So, even my hauler who can get in and out and do stuff, it just is it's so scary. I'm feeling safer when I get to high or when I get to low sec. I'm like, okay, now we're fine. So
I hear that.
it sounds though like there are definitely going to be, things that you're going to encounter when you're working with other CSM members that are going to be disagreeing with you or have different kind of viewpoints or a different paradigm on what Eve is going to be. How do you plan on interacting with these kind of people that have a different mindset on what wormholes should be? Maybe they think that wormholes should just be completely, devoid of any living in something like that. What's your kind of attitude towards how would you interact with people that are opposing your ideology?
Yeah, I think a lot of times whenever you meet someone, and it doesn't have to be Eve, it could be anything, right? A lot of times when you're approaching a problem that you have opposing viewpoints on, the best thing to do is to find something common ground. Like you have to find something that you both agree on. If you can't establish common ground, then you're like there's no point in having the conversation. But generally speaking, 99% of the time, unless the person's just completely closed off, and I don't think anyone who gets elected to CSM would be like that type of person. You find your common ground, and then you start building from there. Okay, why do you think it should be devoid? Like, what's your rationale? What's your data set behind that? If someone's going to have an opinion that varies significantly from mine, I would want to understand the rationale behind it, and I think CCP would as well. And then just start talking about it. Like, okay, well, I can understand from that point of view, but let's look at the data. Let's look at the interactions. Let's look at how many wormholes have been jumped in the last month. Let's look what happens if you remove residents. What does that number turn to? You know what I mean? And be able to talk about why that's a good or bad thing. For me, obviously, I think it would be a bad thing, and here's the reason why. And if someone was to say, well, I think it's a good thing, and here's the reason why, I would expect them to have significant data to back it up. But I would want to start from a place of common ground first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so one of the things that you kind of bring up there is statistical data. Do you have significant data backing up your belief structure?
I think the MER is probably the best publicly available data that I'll have access to. The only other data that I have is all anecdotal, and I'm capturing all of it in my interview sheet.
Awesome, yeah.
I
Good to keep
the
that
only way
down.
Yeah, I feel like the only way that anecdotal experience and data becomes valuable is when it continues to be echoed. And that's why I want to continue having these meetings and meet with as many groups as possible, because the stronger story that you can create, the stronger data set you can create, the more influence it can have. If you're like, oh, I talked with 3 people and they all said this, and your data pool should have been like 1,000, well, it's not very strong,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah, your
And so
anecdotal evidence goes down completely because you're not getting a pool of actual representation.
exactly, and that's a big reason why, if I get elected, I really want to create this whole like wormhole UN that I'm talking about, because that allows the representation and it allows the data to continue to be captured.
Can you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, so like one of the things that I really liked about what Mark did was he would occasionally hold town halls. And these town halls would sometimes they would just be random. They would just be like a check-in, like, "Hey guys, if you want to join, hop in. We're going to talk about wormholes for the next hour and a half." And sometimes they would be post-patch. Now, for me, my town hall was always whenever I met up with Mark for beer at the brewery, and we would just talk about stuff then. um, but a lot of times this would be his opportunity to not just explain kind of what was happening and go over his point of view, but also gather feedback from people. My concept behind the Wormhole UN is very similar to that. I would open it up to 1 to 2 representatives from any group currently living in Wormhole space. You could be a group of 10 people, you could be a group of 500 people. You get 1 to 2 representatives, and then we would meet on a monthly basis to go over, hey, what do you like? What do you not like? What are some things that you've noticed that you wish you could change? And most importantly, why? And start having that conversation. And I know I don't know if you got a chance to see my interview or not, but um, it sounded like Lumi and Swift were very much so on board with the idea and they wanted to be included in it. So I think that's a great way to increase engagement and hopefully make sure that they're staying on top of the pulse of wormhole space as much as I would be should I get elected.
Would you say that CCP endorsement and backing of the idea is something that is important to really push that out to the community? And do you think that they should endorse and back other groups and other ideas, other things more than they do currently?
I think I think it certainly doesn't hurt. I don't really. CCB has to play a delicate game because they can't be seen as picking favorites. And while I certainly appreciate the approval, we'll call it. I don't want to call it endorsement. I feel
Okay,
like that
okay,
could
yep,
get people
no,
in trouble.
yep, yep, good
Well, I
call.
think the approval of it is nice, and that they want to be involved is a great thing. Um, I think it's just important that they kind of be careful. But I certainly think that encouraging people to open up more avenues of communication with CSM candidates, with actual CSM, with CCP, and with the player base is a good thing, right? That being able to communicate more has never hurt anyone. So I think that that's a good thing for for them to be involved in. And if any other areas of space or groups have a similar idea, then I mean, I absolutely support it. I think you should be. I think as a CSM rep, you should be a phone call away, right? A Discord DM away. So my hope would be that they would be doing something similar with their groups.
Awesome, I like that. So for one of the things that kind of I got sparked on the idea of something that I think is important for us to talk about, and just kind of see how your kind of feelings on this. So Eve is well known as being like kind of a toxic game. There's a lot of toxic community kind of things that have happened. Do you think toxicity is a problem in Eve Online, or is that something that's just a misrepresentation?
I remember when Kashal asked this question. I thought it was a good one. I
And I
personally do
stole
not.
I stole that from Kishal. Absolutely. I was
It's
just
a
on
good
her show
one.
today and I was like, oh man, I got this is now coming about. It's something I should talk about for sure.
I personally do not experience it on a regular basis. But anyone who experiences it one time is one time too many. And so I don't think that this game should ever cross into that line of actual toxicity. I mean, you can call someone like noob, get wrecked, whatever. That's fine in terms of like if you just like killed someone slicer in a 1v1 or whatever. But like actually taking it to the point where it's either hate speech or some kind of phobic speech is just that's completely uncalled for, not something that we should have in the game. And thankfully, we have GMs that are very engaged, especially like, and this is what I always tell people, if they ever come across someone like this, join the rookie help channel, find your nearest GM, just at them and be like, hey, here's the screenshot, here's the logs, this person was saying this, or they have a character name named this, and they'll get it taken care of like within the hour. They're so quick to respond. Eve is one of those rare MMOs that has a ton of really responsive and very good GMs. And I think that that's a great thing for our community because it keeps stuff like that out.
Awesome, great answer. I like that. Um, so I want to make sure that we have enough time, set aside. We're kind of getting a little bit low on time now, and
Already, man.
to a certain degree, we've got. We got technically plenty of time, but I want to make sure that we set aside some time for a few other things. We definitely have some
Sure.
questions that I want to make sure I have a Q&A with chat here. We'll go through and pick out some of these questions here and make sure we go over that a little bit later on. But before we get to that, I just want to make sure, do you have anybody that you want to shout out to? I mean, your mom, your dad, I'm sure they're watching this. Is there anybody that's a mentor, somebody that's, been with you the whole time, your support base, or anybody that you just look up to, or other CSM representatives that you want to shout out to?
Yeah, gosh, so I mean, there's so many people. I will shout out the people that I know are watching right now. So Shu, appreciate you watching. Cross, anyone from Novak who's watching. Boris, if you're still awake, you should probably go to sleep. Mushy, he's definitely should be asleep right now. But I think a lot of the people who've had a significant impact, on my like Eve career, Demondred, who's the guy who got me into Eve, Tomaz, who's been around since 2009 or 2010. A lot of I've been able to fly with like a lot of the greats. That's your Victor Pavolmans, Braxis Denadard, Michael 1995, Jimmy Michaels.
Man, you got a name for names. There, a brain for names. I can't even say shit. Name for names.
I got a name for names. No, but Razog Zateki, Boris Karova, who has just recently resubbed after he and I had a phone call on Saturday. Yeah, there's so many people. I'll never get through the list. But also, like we have an awesome CSM list too. Like Oris, Victor Spear from Phantom Space, Kashal Aderon, Phantomite, like all these people, Rots, Oz, like we
Oz
just
and
have
his
such a
stuff. He's the one that I'm like I'm terrified of high sec, but man, Oz, you make it look kind of sexy.
He's got a brain about him, that's for sure. He's got a lot of knowledge and a lot of knowledge in the space, which is good. Mike Azaria, like I mean, just should I just say everyone at this point? I feel like I've named so many people. Casing Cook, I gotta throw Casing in there. Artanis Talander. Yeah, just I mean, there's too many to name, but yeah, thanks all to everyone who's either watching right now or has supported me in the past and the impact they've had. Mark, of course. I always waffle on whether or not I could shout him out because he's technically CCP now, but we'll just shout out Mark. Yeah.
Awesome. And so before we wrap up things, I want to make sure we get a decent amount of time to. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you're super passionate about? Something that you want to make sure that we have some solid amount of time to talk about?
I mean, we kind of have already gotten into it, honestly. I think the biggest thing that I'm really passionate about is exactly what I'm running on, and that's wormholes. That and player retention would be great.
Oh, that's a good one. Let's talk about player retention real quick.
Yeah, let's. Okay, let's get into it.
This is a really good one. So player retention, how do you feel about it? Is there anything that we can do better at this point with our player retention?
The problem, there's a couple things I think we can do. From a selfish point of view, we could certainly include a 30-second probing tutorial on how people need to scan down signatures and anobs. That to me seems like 101, Even if it's a YouTube video of someone being like, launch your probes, hold shift, hold alt.
I mean, they could still put that into a mission. It's so easy to put it into a mission and just have it, accomplish this and then move on to the next. I mean, they already have it in the, there's tons of things that are similar to that in the tutorial. Absolutely. I'm a big one about D-scan. I mean, come on, this is never talked about at all. What the hell?
No joke. Came up today in my conversation with Starshade Seekers. They were like, "There's no D-scan tutorial." I was like, "Wait, oh my gosh, you're right. There isn't. There's nothing. You could go on YouTube and you could search in D-scan tutorial, but there's nothing within the game." And that kind of leads me to my second point: is that when you come to this game, you're not really thinking like, oh, I should be on this subreddit, I should be using these third-party tools, I should be, looking on the forums. You're thinking like, what can I do within the game? And so we really need to improve a couple things that we use every day. For me, that's scanning and descan. There's no part of it in the tutorial in the NPE experience. And then we also need to improve recruitment, like the in-game recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of times when you create these corporation ads, you can do it with any, you can click anything. Like I could technically put a HiSec tag on my corporation ad, and it's like, well, but what? That's not
right.
But just a way to find it to be more representative of reality, so that people aren't joining these groups realizing that they hate it and being like, oh well, I don't want to be here anymore. So that's really big for me, I think, is find a way to do better in-game recruitment, either whether through corp ads or whether it's through sponsored events, whatever it is, and then find a way to include descan and scanning in the tutorial so people know that you're not just limited to the green sites in space and your stargates or your missions. You can scan down.
It's so weird that that's not something that is inherently part. I mean, it's such a huge part of the game. To not have a full-blown tutorial on it, a little bit odd.
Yeah.
So are there any things that you kind of, when it comes to the initial tutorial experience and stuff like that, we've come a long way with the tutorial. Do you think the path that we've taken of, and this is something that's kind of my personal thing of this epic story that you get dropped into in the middle of the first day, or oh, there's an epic story, and then it just peters out to nothing. How do you feel about that? Do you think that was the right direction, or do you think that there's a better envisionment to a new player experience?
I mean, let's not lie, it's super cinematic.
It looks pretty. It does look really cool.
It looks so cool, and that's awesome. I think that's great, but it's definitely not indicative of reality. So how do you balance that? I have no idea. I think you have a problem with, like, we want people to be like, we want to draw them in, we want a hook, you know, like we want that sexy hook line at the beginning of the book, like we want a reason for them to continue, but we also don't want them to feel like they just got dropped off a cliff when they when they finish.
Well,
There's got
that's
to be like a
this is my kind of similar to the grabbing of a hook in the starting of a book. It's almost like you're starting out with a Stephen King novel, and then all of a sudden, after chapter one, you get dropped into a physics book, and it's like that's not
yeah,
how you get people hooked on physics. Okay,
yeah,
like
exactly. Exactly. So I have no idea what the right answer there is. If I had an opportunity to speak to like a new player and be like, so tell me how you feel now after like the cinematics end and it's like you're on epic arc time or you're like running through your series of missions. They're like, oh, am I on like a, a travel simulator? Like, am I just moving to move now? You know? And it's like, okay, no, we need to find a way to get them engaged. And that's why I think finding like a good corp or a good group of people early is so important because they take what's, and I said this on Kashal's show. I was like, they take the 10 million pieces that are part of the Eve universe and break it down into a much more digestible state. What do you want to focus on? Do you want to do exploration? Do you want to do PvP? Do you want to do PvE? Do you want to do mining? Like, what do you want to do? Research and stuff like that, and just kind of break it down so people can digest it slowly rather than trying to like force funnel it all the way down your throat.
interesting. So, would you say that there should be more of a focus on funneling people into the community, maybe enhancing the tutorial to a certain degree, like you said, with like, at the very least, let's get a D-scan and probe scanning tutorial out there. That's pretty simple. Something that could be done. I would also advocate for a very well done faction warfare tutorial that kind of brings you out. First get to LoSec. Ha ha ha! That's going to be a challenge on its own.
It's a Tama.
One of my things too is that you should have a mission to go die in LoSec. That should be like a sub. Like you can do all of these missions, but along the way you haven't completed and successfully finished until you've died at least once while you're running this mission arc of like 20 missions that you need to do in LoSec, and one of the sub final things is like, well, if you haven't died yet, go find somebody to kill you. This is your mission. You can cheese it and stuff like that. We'll give the fuck because it's just about introducing that thing. There's a lot of different kind of things that I have a lot of ideas in this area, but one of the things that I also kind of find interesting is the topic of how do you feel about Eve's price? Do you think that that's a deterrent to retention in this game, or even getting somebody into the game?
I hadn't really thought about the price component. It might be. Are we still technically the most expensive
Oh, by far.
MMO?
So that's one of the things I
Okay.
find very interesting. So they did inflation on their price, and as far as I understand, I don't think any other game that's an MMO has increased their price at all. In fact, most have decreased their minimum month to month price on their game. And CCP is the only company to increase that. And there is inflation across a lot of products in this world right now. But I would also argue that MMOs, there's been a trend of a deflation that is actually happening, because the lower the price you can get, the more you can pull people into your game to try it out in the beginning. It used to be $15 a month, and it got jumped up a few years ago to $20 a month. And so, do you have any feelings about that when that happened? Have you changed your mind since and just been like, it's not so bad anymore?
I remember when it happened, and I remember the big outcry because even localized, they changed the prices. So like even depending on, it didn't depend on what country you were anymore. Everywhere it went up, and I think that was one of the reasons why we had the big outcry when we did. For me personally, and this is just my personal situation, it doesn't bother me, but I can obviously understand why it would bother someone who's like waffling with the idea of, here's this incredibly difficult game with all these moving pieces. I haven't really found a community that I want to be in. Why would I pay the most money possible for an MMO out there right now when I could just go find something else that might be more enjoyable? So yeah, I think it absolutely could be a deterrent, but I would I would love to look at the data and see kind of what that impact of the price increase had, and see if lowering it again, or even if we wanted to, and this is just literally off the top of my head, have a situation where new accounts, and I mean like new, not like I'm just rolling another scanning alt, um, but like properly new accounts can have access to the game for cheaper for like the first month or something, or like something along those lines. How do you balance that against people rolling accounts? I don't know. That's not for me to figure out. That's for CCP to do it. But I would love to see the data.
Yeah, no, that's one of the big things that's a big hurdle is to see how much has this actually hurt. Because I've heard from, and I don't know if this is true of me personally, but it's very likely that I might. But if they drop the price by half, I might have twice as many alts. I have two right, or I have me and my one alt right now. But if they half the price, I'd probably, it'd be much easier for me to justify getting two more alts all of a sudden. But is that
Right.
even healthy for the game? Is it a good idea to have with the multi boxing that is Eve Online? Is it good to have a barrier that kind of says like, no, you got to pay a bunch of money if you want to have a bunch of different characters in this game. And if you have the price, if you doubled everybody, the numbers might look good
Yeah.
in who's online at one time. But is that something that's healthy? There's a lot of questions that I think could be delved into regarding the price structure and stuff. And that's something that I kind of want to bring to CCP and kind of just understand to a certain degree because at first I definitely was very against it, and
Hmm.
now I think it's a deterrent in that, like you said, it would be nice if we could find a way to like make it cheaper for the real new player, or you got to be so careful with that. But it's not so bad actually because I do think that the more and more I think about it, the more, and this is an evolving thoughts that I've had as I've been talking about this recently, is that is it healthy for us to have more multi-boxing in this game, because of a cheaper price on your because it's so cheap to play this game, or is that barrier of $20 stopping us from having twice as many alts?
Yeah. It's a great
Uh,
question.
but yes, so we also wanted to make sure that we set aside time here for any questions that are being brought up by the people of New Eden.
Oh
And
boy.
let's take a look here. I'm going to go all the way to the top and see what we kind of find here. So down the rabbit hole for sure. Nope. Okay, let's see. No questions. Oh, do you feel and this one I don't quite understand. I don't know how I would respond, but I'm interested. Do you feel there is a world division? I'm gonna let you take that however you want. Also, be like, that's a weird question because I think it's a weird
Well,
question. But
World Division, like well, I don't know if they're still watching. Like, can they explain a little more?
yeah, is there
Or,
is there something behind that a little bit more? Let's
yeah,
move
what
on
like
from there.
okay.
Let's see here. No, you know what? Actually, I need to make sure. You know what? That was an old question for
Oh,
somebody
okay.
else. So that makes more sense. Because I think I remember what that was about actually. But so let's move on. Let's see here. Am I missing anything else here? Delete C4 space, right?
Yes, of course. Always delete C4. It's so funny because Oris, who's also running, has been like, "Oh yeah, delete C4 space." And he lives in C4 space. Man's in-game suicidal.
Can you go into a little bit? I think I understand a little bit about that, but from my understanding is that C4 space is useless, right? Is why nobody needs C4 space. It doesn't do anything.
It's it's not useless. People use it for different reasons, but it is effectively worse. Like people, and the thing is, the groups that live in there, they love it, and so I don't want them to think that I'm trash talking their space, but they're basically like C4 is the highest. It's the highest low class hole you can get in. because it doesn't allow you to bring capitals in or out. The only way you can get capitals in there is if you build them. And of course, that gives you a huge advantage, right? If anyone were to attack you, because they can't bring capitals, but you can, so you can undock like 100 carriers, and it's like, what are you gonna do about it?
Right.
You know, like, but yeah, it's the sites suck compared to like technically you get more ISK like in blue loot if you run the sites in C4 space, but it takes so long to do that you're just better off running C3. So C4 space is in like a really weird spot where it's just not. The only thing that's cool about it is it has dual statics, and none of them are case-based statics. Whereas with the C2, you have dual, and you have a case-based static and a wormhole static. So that's like the only characteristic that is cool about that. But no, it's effectively it's a very it hasn't been developed out at all. Hasn't been given any love. I don't know for how many years we've been asking for CCP to change the spawn rates or spawn distances on them. Because basically the only way you can run them is if you either use capitals or if you use like beam paladins, because you gotta be able to kill stuff that's really close and real far. And so it's like, well, why am I here? You know, when I could just practice rep my C3.
So I think this is an interesting one. Do you think that there should be more monuments to celebrate or no or a note impactful more, I think that's more impactful events in wormhole space, such as Rage KS Monument?
Oh yeah. So I don't know if you do this or not, but in Rage J 115405, which is HK home, there's a monument to the first ever keep star that was killed. It's a wreck. It's technically facing the wrong way. I think we put in tickets to CCP to fix it, but a quick rotate on the 180, a 180 rotate on the x-axis probably isn't in the cards. But
To spaghetti code.
it's spaghetti code. Yeah, it's basically a pos at this point. But what's cool is when I lived in Rage, we would have explorers come and they would instantly warp to it. I was like, oh, what a great way to like kill people, right? So I would set up bubble traps on there with a decloaking mobile depot and just smart bomb kill them to death or whatever it was. But yeah, I think that would be great. Not only because there is a lot of history that's in wormhole space, but also because when people come across it, whether they're familiar with it or not, it's a cool thing for them to go and visit. Eve's a pretty game, and so being able to go look at something, even if it's the wreck of something, is really cool and something that I think people who are natural explorers, which if you're in a wormhole, you're likely a natural explorer, would want to go see. Have you ever seen like one of the most fleeting things that you can see in wormhole space is the Major Tom
Oh,
Anom?
no, I haven't. That's a cool one, though. I've heard of that, though, for sure. I
Yeah,
have
it's like
seen and this isn't wormhole space, but it's the black just square that's floating through space. That's
the monolith.
the
Yeah,
monolith. Yes.
yeah, that's in Drifter wormholes specifically.
Oh,
But
is
those
it
are
in
cool.
Drifter?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it is a wormhole thing. I have seen
Yeah, yeah,
that, so I
yeah.
have messed around with
C14s, the
exploring a
C.
little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're great. They're cool. I don't necessarily appreciate the fact that drifters sometimes camp those holes, and you're in ships that don't have cloaks, and then all of a sudden they alpha you. Um, but drifter wormholes are a great way to get around.
Yes, that's why I was, there, getting around, just checking it out.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so let's see here. The UN would be headquartered in Thera, is that correct?
No, absolutely not. I
No.
don't even consider Thera a wormhole. I'm sorry.
Ah. Ooh. Maybe some battle words
Anything
there
that
for some people, not for me,
anything that
but
doesn't have asset safety, like to me, is just case base. Like if like you can't anchor citadels, none of your assets are at risk. It's just a cool way. It's the original version of what is now Turner.
hmm
Turner is essentially Thera, except you can anchor stuff in it, and you get rotating statics. Like I don't know, changed my mind. Like I just don't see it as a wormhole. It doesn't even have a J code. What? Like
That's true. Yeah,
I
no, good
also
point. Good point. It doesn't even have a J code. Wow, that's a good argument, I'd say.
like I can rent a station in there and set my home to Thera. In fact, I should check and see if we still have a station in Thera. That was something that we had a long time ago. Um, but you used to be able to like set your home to Thera, and it was like I could just pod
I can
pod
just
to
live
Thera.
in Thera forever, never have a
Yeah, so
problem.
I'm not
Oh,
a I'm not a Thera fan.
okay. Good points. Good points. Just something really quick. It's not really a question, but it sounds like there's a lot of brawls and respect when giving permission to roll off peacefully is a type of trust that has not been seen elsewhere in Eve. Would you agree with that kind of statement?
Yeah, a lot of times like this, the community that you have within wormhole space is, from what I've experienced, unlike any other area. Like everybody knows each other, and if they don't know somebody, then somebody in their corp knows someone from that corp. And so being able to set up like the honor brawls, if you have a shared static or if you're directly connected, or being able to be like, hey, sorry, like we can't form. Is it cool if we roll off? Like not holding the static hostage is all very like cordial behavior that you can find, like I don't think you find anywhere else.
That's it. Just yeah, I would say you might find it a little bit in faction warfare. I've definitely opened up a lot of diplomatic lines with the Keldari, and we're forever enemies. We're forever. It's a forever war. None of us can win. So eventually, you just like, well, I've been shooting at you for so long. Like we gotta get a beer, and then shoot each other, and then drink another beer, and like
There you
let's
go.
just it's Valhalla, my friends. Let's just drink and have party and then go blow each other up. Um, there is someone here that I'm not going to say the name, but somebody apparently thinks that you want to be, or that you should be, that they would vote for you for president, and that you would
Ah,
have a good shot at that run for the U.S. presidency. But they did say
is
say
this
my
Chloro?
name. Yes.
Chloro, there. I've said your name, Chloro. I'm sorry, I missed you.
Say my name. I saw that and I was like, and then the presidential thing, I was like, okay, I'm gonna mix this together. Not really a question, but let's see here. In-game wormhole mapper. What do you think about that? Do you think that's should be exclusive to the third-party community, or do you think that it would be a good idea for CCP to implement something really awesome, or maybe should they just go something basic and let the community build something awesome?
So I think that the ship has unfortunately sailed on that. We've had communities that have been building mapping tools for over a decade now. They're just gonna be better, and I'd rather have CCP spend their dev time on something more impactful than an in-game mapping tool. Yes, I do think it would be helpful, especially for new players, but
Do you think they
I
should
just,
point them in the direction of that community though? Because this is one of my big things is community
yeah.
spotlights. I think should be something that's an in-game thing that you should be directed to every day. That spotlight things in the community and give spotlights to killboards, to wormhole mappers, to newbie information, to the Eve University wiki. It should be accessible and highlighted in game is my kind of feeling, and I think that kind of goes towards that. If you're not gonna build if you do if dev time is better spent elsewhere, but how do you get to that information that there is even a wormhole mapper? But also you do kind of have to know a little bit about Eve just to get to the level of understanding that there's even a way to map wormholes like that. That is something to do.
And if it's in the tutorial, there should be a way to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Good point. Good point.
So, a good opportunity to do a shout out to Pathfinder. Siggy just got unburied, re re realived.
Revitalized,
Yeah.
realived.
To the folks over there at HK. So shout out to the people that are redeveloping Siggy. But yeah, there's just so many good tools out there. Tripwire, Galaxy Finder. There's just a ton of options. There's even a new one that came out that I was gonna stick up for my own personal server, but I kind of forgot about it, so I stopped worrying about it.
Let's see here. So there's somebody that does talk about how, yeah, one of the opening scene was just so intimidating, and then he just got blown up, and he just didn't know what the hell he was like. I think it's cool, it looks cool, but it's not Eve, you know. I'm a big
Right.
proponent of almost to like, you should almost be like, here, you're part of the academy, but also if they're, you know, kind of have like a 5-minute timer of like, you know, sitting around, and if anybody else joins at that exact, you know, within that 5 minutes, then you have like a school of people. Or maybe there's like, oh, in 30, you know, after we get through this, we'll have a school thing that'll be happening every 30 minutes, you know, in this thing that, you know, it's just like, you're not some epic character in Eve, you're just another pod pilot like the rest of us. But you know what's
Right.
epic is that you can make yourself epic in this game, like your story. And it doesn't matter if you spend all of your time in high sec, there can be some epic stories after 20 years living in high sec. You know, hopefully you branch out beyond there at that point, but you know, like the story is not, you know, this trick. Like there is an epic, crazy story that's going on around you as well, like this Triglavian story and the endless and the, you know, all this the deathless or whatever, that, you know, all this crazy stuff that's kind of going on. But it's not like you're not the hero going in and charging in and defeating and slaying the monster that is ruling the land, and you know, it's not nothing
humbled
like
very
World of
quickly.
Warcraft. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see
I would like to
here.
see Jove Space. Something happen with Jove
Ooh.
Space. I think that would be cool.
Do you think skyhooks have improved PvP in nullsec? And I'm going to take this a step further and say, how do you feel about the changes to skyhooks?
I mean, it's a net negative. Even like even people in nullsec realize that it's a negative. Like this is what I call oversteer. Like they just way overcorrected. I understood like why they want to be able to have some level of security for the magmatic gas, but like the
But
the
why?
fact that
My question is why would you need that security? What does magmatic gas do?
it like powers the iHub stuff or whatever, the
No,
SovHub stuff.
that's the
Or the
ice. That's the ice.
Oh, okay, the Metanox. Well, you can still steal ice though.
Yeah, but that's not what people steal, right? That's you can steal ice, but and it may be separate rules for separate things. But I'm going to focus on the magmatic gas, which only goes, as far as I understand, is very much the moon miner, the free moon miner that doesn't need to have a player. The old moon mining system is basically back in
Right.
the game, and that's what this fuels. And so basically
Gotcha.
it fuels profit to fuel profit. Why does it fucking matter then? And you can also don't even need it. Like if you removed magmatic gas from the game right now, I don't think that you'd break anything except for the moon miner, is my understanding. I could be wrong on that. But
Okay.
from my understanding is that it's not a vital resource in any way, shape, or form. Ice is a vital resource, but the
Right.
magmatic gas was not a super vital resource. But I could be wrong because, and once again, I'm not very. But that's what everybody talks about when they talk about magmatic gas. They only talk about, from what I've seen, is the moon triller. So if anybody knows better than me on this, please correct me, and I would love to be corrected. But from my understanding is if you took that resource out of the game, nothing really changes except for you can't moon mines without actually having an Athenor and doing it the proper way. The easy way of doing the old just stealing shit. Magmatic gas gets used for either cyno structures or jump bridges. Also two things that I don't give a fuck about. Like that power projection is not... So that is important though. I would say that's way more important and needs to be around more than the moon miners. But also one of the things that, you know, like that sounds like we're just hurting power projecting, and it hurts big giant empires that need to have a massive amount of this shit in order to use to make travel super easy and safe in their empire, and allow them to own massive amounts of space so they can get to it in 3 minutes instead of 4 hours, you know? Like
Cyno beacons take. Is that what you're saying? They take.
that's what
or
I
jump
just
bridges
saw.
too.
I just saw was
Okay.
magmatic gas is used for cyno structures and jump bridges. So the Ansible bridges, which also I think, you know, so that's it. That actually just makes me even more happy that that's what I'm
Yeah.
hurting, you know, like because once again, fuck you. You know, like,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, like that's my statement on people are like, rah, my magnometic gas, and I was just like, fuck you. But now I see it's even more of a fuck you. So, I mean, don't get me wrong though. I think there should be some levels of power projection and stuff like that. But I am highly against the ability to transverse space without any issues at all.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a solution either. I'm not saying that this is the thing that's preventing that. It prevents less of them, and I've heard definitely just because you have less of them doesn't stop the superhighway, because the superhighway will always be the most important. There does need to be something that hurts that superhighway. But I just like to hear that I'm hurting Ansible plexes. Great, awesome. Well, not anymore because I can't rob them anymore. They stopped me.
So I just. Of course, I have an instance of Eve up right now. I just took a look. It looks like it uses ice. I don't see the gas requirement, but
oh well.
So my gut says, kill it all. kill it all. If you should be able to steal it. If it has and I was under the impression that gas had some sort of component for like keeping the Sov hub or whatever online. If that's not the case, then like if it's just income generator and it's just for metanoxes, like it should. I'll give you the same answer that I've given everyone who's asked me about this. If it is a Sov structure, then it should be tied to Sov. And what I mean by that is, if your ADM is 1, then you have like an 18-hour window to where you can be in Tosis, right? If it's 6.0, you have like a 3-hour window. And so if you're using your space, then you should have very limited window. But if you're not using your space, then you should have a very wide window. And I think that's what it should come down to. It should be a daily thing. You could set it for your middle time or whatever your prime time is, and then it'll fall on either side of that, and it should be associated with your Sov. If it's a Sov structure, give it the same Sov mechanics that other structures that are associated with Sov have. That to me seems like the easiest way to do it.
So Mush says magnomatic gas is provided by lava planets, correct, and it is used to fuel the moon drill on the magnomatic moon drill, as well as the sinusoidal navigation beacon and the sinusoidal suppression. So it's not the jump bridges, but it is the sinusoidal, so you can jump to it with a capital ship or any kind of sino. It's
Gotcha.
a permanent
Okay.
sino thing that's around. So not as much damaging, but yeah, I don't know how much, is really needed to have those sino suppression and sino beacons and stuff like that. I know that sino suppression is super important in pushing and holding back people from being able to get their capitals in to a certain degree, forcing a sub-capital versus possibly capital fight kind of situation. But then, yeah, ICE is used to fuel the Advanced Logistics Network, the Ansible, and the Super Capital construction facility upgrades. So, I think the Super Capital upgrade facility is super important. The Ansible Flex, is once again on the low tier list. So it sounds like out of all the things that these skyhooks are providing, it's really just especially the magnomatic gas is primarily just giving you like moon goo, and that's I'm okay with like if you're gonna cry over that, then I don't know, like what didn't exist before, so like you couldn't do that before. But yeah, okay, so let's see here. I think that let me make sure that I'm not missing any other questions here real quick.
Shout out to Mush for the explanation.
Yes, thank you Mush, very much. What is your favorite third-party tool for EVE Online, and why is it SIG?
Did Mush ask that question?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Oh, I wonder why. Obviously because Siggy is very based, and it's the fact that it's being currently developed by people who are also very based just makes it based on based. So how can you argue with that?
And then somebody also brought up the fixing the keep star. I think the rage keep star so that it faces the right direction was a complaint that I think we already got that though. Let's see here. I think that what are your thoughts on Pathfinder?
Pathfinder's another mapping tool. It's one that we use in No Vacancies. I like it, but it does have some limitations. Right now, from what I understand, and someone who's a developer can probably be more specific. It seems like it's being developed. Like there are different forks that are being developed by different groups, and so I don't know if like a prevalent one has emerged just yet. But you can basically customize it to do what you want. But it has to be independently hosted in order to be successful. So I like it, but um, yeah, it seems to be some limitations, and it's slow a little sometimes.
Awesome. Well, I think that is the end of our questionnaire here. If there's anything I missed and you're still around, go ahead and throw it in real quick, and we'll try and find a thing here. But I want to make sure we get in. How do we get a hold of you? What are do you stream? Do you use YouTube? Do you use social media? You're always on Discord. What's the best way to get a hold of you? And is there any like cool things that you're content that you're putting out via the tubes?
So I'm not much of a tuber, but I am very engaged with the community. You can DM me. My Discord is Mick Fightmaster, no spaces. It's just my name, no spaces, no capitals. So definitely hit me up there. Check out my forum post. There's probably going to be a link in the VOD. But if there's not, I'll make sure to attach it as a comment. So definitely check that out. Leave a like. Leave a question. I love getting a chance to engage with folks there. One of the things that I really like about the campaign forums is it serves as a means of it's kind of your record. Like people can put their comments there. You can say how you're going to take an approach to something, and then if you go up for re-election the next year, you'd be like, okay, let's see how you did. You know, obviously we're not able to develop everything we want, but in terms of like, let's say I say I'm going to create this wormhole UN, right? But if I never do it, then it's like, okay, that's a big fail if I get on. So I think I think it's important to comment on there. And yeah, other than that, no, I'm not a huge social media guy. Just got the forums, Discord, and good old fashioned Eve mail if you want to go old school.
Oh yes, yeah, good old school Eve mail. I remember a time when that was the way of communication in Eve Online, and it has fallen way to the wayside. But
Oh yeah.
we've enhanced our communication capabilities in the last 20 years quite a bit. There was supposedly a question about Potch. I didn't see it. Um, and because you're so popular, everybody's here asking questions and doing things. So I might have missed that one. Trying to look through here, but I mean, if you could repeat it, that would probably be the best way for me to find out which one you were talking about here. Just asking about about Potch make isk making. So yeah, do you have any thoughts on Potch and the isk making opportunities that are out there in the multi boxing that's happening?
Yeah, so I flew with Rote when they were living in Pochvin exclusively out in Navula. I was the highest damaging dread in the big fight against Frat. I take a lot of credit in that because it was like a 22 bill Moros. Um, but yeah, Pochvin unfortunately is an issue right now. I have no idea how the devs are going to develop it. When I spoke with Rote, I met with them last week. They said, we already told CCP to cut the payout in half. Like, because it's just insane the amount of ice they're making out there. So I don't experience the space as regularly as some other people, but I think it is prohibitive to a lot of folks because of how strong the multi-boxing setups have gotten out there. Whether you're a 20-man EOS blob or if you're a 10-man Artie Varger gang, there's just very little, if any, way to contest it unless you just go N+1. And Potchman is a type of system where I think N+1 should be discouraged because it's such a niche part of space. It's not necessarily a wormhole, right? But it is very limiting in the mechanics behind it, and being able to use those to your advantage or disadvantage of your enemies is a good thing, I think. So we can try and get away from the N+1 and from the heavy multi-boxing. I think that's a good thing.
Do you think that drone assist is a problem?
Yes. I don't understand why it still exists. I really don't. And all the people I've spoken to don't understand why it exists either. If we could get one thing out of this CSM year, assuming we get on, getting rid of drone assist, if we got rid of that, we would be like the most successful CSM ever.
I'm pushing for it because I don't see a need for it. I don't. I I hear there's complaints, but there may be some minor reasons, but really, looking at the power it gives to solo boxers. So, um, do you feel Sissy should be reopened? Yes. I hope your answer is yes. And I mean, the only thing that I can understand is maybe make something that's not Sissy. That's a little bit like maybe it's a year old or something like that. Like, it doesn't give you all the newest updated things and you get to just break all the things immediately or even before it comes out. But if it was like a year old on all the mechanics and stuff and you could use it to just kind of figure out your way around, I think that'd be really cool. I mean, it's been most of my life that it's existed in this, and it's weird that
Yeah.
it's gone for me. But what are your thoughts on Sissy?
So I'll answer the question, but I wanted to first make a point that Drake Idion mentioned in the conversation that I had post CSM interview with like Phantomite and Redline and crew. Um, and I thought it was a good one. Eve is a game where like we're supposed to figure things out live. Like we're supposed to be able to like make mistakes and know that that's okay. And we're supposed to be able to take those risks. And that's okay. And so when I think about CC, it can't be an all or nothing approach, I think. We've been playing the game long enough. We understand what happens when CCP wants to launch a huge iteration. What's the first thing you go to on patch day? It's the patch notes, and then it's known bugs and issues, and you just look at the list of things that are happening, and you can't help but think to yourself, man, if we had had a chance to maybe do like a series of playtests, maybe playtest in each time zone for a couple weeks leading up to this big release, sure, it might have taken some of the hype off, right? But it would have made for a better release day than us paying to beta test and fix bugs.
Yeah, because we're already I mean, we're all you can either beta test early and be known participant in the beta test, or they can release it without that, and then you're now a beta tester that is paying for it and didn't sign up to pay to beta test an expansion for them. That's a good answer.
Yeah, because we still pay full price, and so it's no different than like pre-ordering a game like Starfield and then being like, well, I can't play this, and putting it down for a year and then be like, okay, now I can play this.
Right?
they,
Yep.
they fix everything.
Yep. No, absolutely. Well, so we are way, way over time, and it's not
Oh shit.
surprising because this has been a really engaging conversation, and I think that one of the big ones was we spent a lot of time on these questions, but you've had some really great questions coming from the audience. I wanted to make sure that we had time to set aside for doing that. Maybe I'll make it more time next time. So, especially with when we have honored guests that pull in the great question people. So thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. Thank you very much, Mick Fightmaster. Once again, I love that name for coming on. It's been an honor to have you here, and have a great night, everybody.
Thanks for having me.